I always knew that I was going to be a dad. That's why I was a dad on purpose. I just knew it. I knew I'd be a dad, and I wanted to do it in a really great way. Having a legacy of raising beautiful daughters to at least, get to this point in their lives is just fantastic to me, and I think that's part of what's really made my life feel full.
What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. from the Dad Central Show and Dad Central. And we almost didn't have a quiet start, but we won't talk about that. What's up, Drew?
Yeah, Drew Solon of Dad Central on the Dad Central Show. I just barely missed my alert on my phone going off before the recording. But what's going on? I talked about it last time. Summertime, all the planning, all the figuring out schedules, who's going what, where. We just had Canada Day weekend, and our family was literally going in like 3 different directions for 3 days in a row. So Canada Day was spent actually resting and recouping. But looking ahead, we got a move coming up, so more planning. So lots going on in our family. How about you?
I did today dealing with Toronto traffic, which is always a challenge at the best of days, but glad I made it back in time to do the recording. Yes, summer has started, but summer is going to go quick. And a lot of dads are saying, we got to get in stuff real quick because it's going to go real fast. So I hear chatting with a lot of dads, what you're going to do over the summer, this and that, day vacations, etc. Some downtime, hopefully. And of course, always chores around the house or the home. So those things, and also kids to camp. So, and also, dad told me, man, it's so expensive to take, for kids going to camp. I go, yeah, remember when we went to camp? Well, a lot of times it was free. It ain't free anymore. So there we go.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's a mouthful there. The one thing on the busyness or the activities, I saw a great little bingo chart from another fatherhood organization sent yesterday. And really all that was on it were almost one-to-one like momentary like things like sitting and watching a sunset with your child, these reminders of these other moments of just simple connection and sort of face to face with your child are also really valuable, and we want to get those in throughout the summer too.
Absolutely. So before we get our new friend for the day, and hopefully lifetime, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So you're going to introduce us to a new friend today, sir.
Yes, on the show today we have David Bauer. So David Bauer was the second of 5 children raised in the San Francisco Bay Area during the 1970s. So he's earned degrees at the University of California, San Diego. He had a BA in economics there, and University of California, Davis, where he got an MBA. So he's also an Eagle Scout, former cadet skier, and most importantly, devoted husband to his wife and best friend. Oh, David, you might have to correct me, Sheree, as well as the proud father of 3 independent and successful adult daughters. Throughout his career, David has been immersed in the high-tech industry, specializing in building business systems for companies seeking scalability. He's also received, get this, might be the first one on the show, a patent for an internet-based auction system that plays a pivotal role in a Fortune 1000 company. So additionally, David and Sheree helped start a Chicago-based company in the automotive sector, which has flourished into a thriving enterprise. So currently, David's enjoying semi-retirement, dedicating part of his time to writing code and designing solutions. And this will be a little bit of a jealous part, playing golf with his desert dweller buddies on Mondays in Scottsdale. So he is the author of a book, Dad on Purpose, and he's got a wonderful organization called dadonpurpose.org. So David, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Wow, it sounds like a job interview, kind of. I don't know. I like it. I like it very much. Sounds good. When I wrote, I think it shows you when I did write that this is, I'm a business person first, kind of when it comes to the way I approach things, including being a dad. It's like, things have to be on purpose. There has to be it has a whole process.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a lot of merit in that approach. I think there's a lot, we talk on this show a lot about intentionality. And to me, it sounds like very intentional in how you approach things and how you've been successful in all of your pursuits. And that to me is also very valuable. So, so welcome to the show. Great to have you. We love to start with a little bit of the backstory. We got some of it there in the intro, but why don't you take us on a little bit of a journey
Mhm.
of David's story that led to the creation of the book and your organization, Dad on Purpose.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where my wife and I became very close friends, and we decided we were going to start businesses. We weren't sure if we were going to have children. And during that time, we had a lot of friends with children, and we got to watch. And we got a lot of things we're like, don't like that, don't do this, And at a certain point, we were even looking at each other going, what would we be doing right now if this was going on? And we both had the same exact reaction. I said, well, if we are going to do this, I think we'd do it the same way. And then we started really talking about it. And it was 10 years before we actually had kids. And we had a kid, and she was still working. And we kind of worked out that I would take mornings, and we got very intentional on timing. And it became almost like a project plan. And then she got pregnant with twins. And so all of a sudden we had, you know, 16 months and 16 minutes apart, we had these kids, and there was a lot of children raising, and they were identical twins. We had to have one toenail painted red so we could tell the difference between them. And so we had to keep track. One was a little sick, they were both premature. So there was a lot of organization that needed to happen just to save their lives. And they were wonderful, and it worked out well. And one of those things that just happened, and it was just very much part of our life, was laundry. We had so many little kids and so much laundry, and this 18-month-old now just like, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? And so we got her doing laundry, folding laundry, taking stuff out of the dryer. And what ended up happening is we had made the decision that we wanted to set expectations where you expect nothing. That's one of my principles. And we set the expectation that if we were going to be doing their laundry, if they weren't. If they did it, we were going to do it. So all of a sudden we got to this point of, let's let them start owning things. Let's let them succeed. Let's let them have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Let them know that something can be started and finished and be satisfactory, or great. Let them feel like they can be successful. And when all of a sudden 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds are successful at things that are like setting the table or helping clear the table, just things like that, all of a sudden they get into a routine, and they love routine, and they love expectations and having them set, at least for a very stable life. And we saw that by us continuing to do the same things and having graduation towards things, you get a knife at 7 years old, and kind of building into it this idea of how things progress, they love those expectations, and it improved very well. So that was kind of the foundation of the process. As I did that, and our kids were doing what they were supposed to, other parents saw it and they're like, whoa, what are you doing? You guys have these great kids. What the hell's going on? And we would say, no, this is what we do. And then we go, you should write a book. You should write a book. So I started writing some things down because I'm one of those guys who does. But I didn't actually think of writing this book until well after my children were in college. And I think after I had a very busy life, we were starting a lot of businesses, wrote little things down. But I've always wanted to write a book. And it's one of those things that I felt I could do, and I had the material. And so this was something also where I talked to all my children and my wife about the topics I could bring up. And the only thing we could all agree on was this book won the first 10 years because, high school was pretty rough. And so they were like, don't put any of that in writing yet. So that's why this says book one, born to 10 years old. So that's kind of where the book is. There's a lot of controversy on what happened and everything, but success, says it all. And they've been incredible children. And I have a great relationship with my wife. So it's been fabulous.
Well, thanks for that intro, and inviting us into that story of you and your wife, and 3 kids under the age of 2, and how you survived. And so, if you go back into that moment, it sounds like obviously organization structure. and both you and your wife had, some prior experiences that could help you with those things. You might also have some of those natural tendencies and traits that, make you say, what, organization, structure, predictability, routine, they might have fit well. I'm wondering, was there any time in the midst of trying to implement these things that you looked at each other and said, is this really working? And like, how do we know if this is even going to like pan out for us?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing about leadership is knowing that failure is a really important part of it. Failure teaches you so much more than success. Lots of times success is really like, why did that even work? Do we really know? Were we lucky? What's this? What's that? When you fail, you usually know why. And so one of my principles is reflection. Look back on what worked and what didn't, because you know what? You're going to have more mistakes than you're going to have success. I think it's wrong to avoid failure. It's wrong to not discuss failure. I think it's important to understand what felt good, what didn't feel good, what could we do a little better the next time. So we talked a lot about failure. So I don't want to shun failure in any way. I think what you want to do is make sure that you start having consistency. If you can have consistency, then you can start looking for what failure is given the consistency. If everything's changing every day, then it's hard to even know what went wrong or what went right or what's going on. And so I'm into ritual, and that's what kids are. And especially in this first 10 years, the first 6 years, the kid should know everything by rote. It shouldn't even be kind of a guessing game. Kids should know what's going to happen. They should know when they're going to bed. They should know what they're expected. They should know what would happen if they get up in the middle of the night. All those things that happen, they should know. If you're a dad who has to leave a lot and work a lot, like I did, I had my hours. I had 2 incredibly important times, and they were my times. Certainly my wife was around with some of them, but those were times when I had very deliberate things, and the kids expected me during those things. And then, and what happened in between those times, I might check on. But if you don't have a purpose to understand what do you need right now, what does your kid need now, and execute on that, your kid's going to kind of, whatever, they're going to go. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But at least use the time. And I think that's what we decided. We had enough, like you said, experience with other people. My wife ran a restaurant for 9 years, so she'd heard every excuse in the book. We did like 300 W-2s or whatever every year because all the kids would quit. So we knew everything about what everyone was saying. We knew what lies were, everything. So she was very used to hearing it all and understanding that this is what a kid needs and this is what a kid wants. And there's differences. And so we listened to our kids, but I think we learned how to involve them and when not to involve them. And that worked very well.
Okay. So the importance of reflection is where you started. And looking at failures, maybe mistakes, things that didn't go so well as opportunities to learn from them and self-correct or course correct, and then move as close as possible towards this idea of consistency in, and can you talk more about the importance of that consistency?
Yeah. Well, I think that this idea of consistency to me meant predictability. Predictability meant that you can be satisfied. Can you be satisfied? Can you come to an understanding of this is good enough? A lot of parents can't even get to what's good enough. If your kid can understand what good enough is, and for you to let them know, hey, this is what I need for you to get to, for me to go, hey, good enough, that's great, good job, you're done. You reach the beginning, the middle, and the end. You're finished with that. They've succeeded. They need to know that that can happen. Once they know that can happen, then they can have predictability. They can have consistency, because then they'll do those things. They'll know they'll get a positive reaction, and then they'll know they'll either move on to the next thing or they won't. So having things kind of like, well, you do this, you do this, you do this. This is what's going to happen. These are the 5 things you need to do. Then we'll get to dance before we have quiet time, and then you get to predict the show this week. And so decision making, all these kinds of things are going to be happening more like an orchestra through your life, and trying to tie some of them together with predictability and consistency and giving them some choices is how you kind of gain that respect for them to see the consistency. They need to be engaged with it. And so decision making is a big chapter in my book. understanding even small decisions, moving to bigger decisions, is how you keep them engaged. So that was how we moved to that consistency. Was they could see predictability, and then they could see us going, yeah, we're doing what we're supposed to do now. Yep, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, yep, you're right. You picked the song. Okay, great. We're going to dance to that tonight. Sounds good. Let's do that. All right, now we're going to sit down for quiet time. Okay, that's going to be one of these 3 shows. Which one is it? You pick. So we had a lot of those kinds of things that were small, but gave them control. And so that control brought them in on what was going on.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful, especially that last part about control. But I'm wondering, when I was reviewing some of the resources on your website, and I looked at the ages, and you had mentioned it in your opening story as well about your daughter being 18 months and doing laundry. My question is, what age is it reasonable to get started on this idea of consistency, routine, and even having some expectations for our children to be able to do things like you're describing?
Yeah, well, I think that 18 months is all about the expectation in 18 months is passing time.
Okay.
And I put that, I try to say that very clearly in the book. You are all of a sudden, at least the situation we were in was minute by minute. It seems when the kids are worm-like, we had 2-month-olds and an 18-month-old, it's like just getting through a day was a big deal. And it seemed like things would go on, and you needed to figure out, how do you not have them in front of a TV? How many times can you play the same game? 18 months, they're beginning to run around. They can move now. At least my kid can. Some other kids can't, but at 18 months, my kid was running and she was, yabber, 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 and she could do some things. Help, help, help. She wanted to help. And she couldn't recite things, but she was physical and she was big enough so that if all of a sudden I brought out a big thing of laundry, she'd be like, grabbing at it anyway. So it's like, all right. This is what I want you to do. And it started out by separation. She knew the difference between her clothes, and the twins' clothes. It was very obvious. And it's like, just put them in the right pile and let's start that way. I need to just take an hour. Okay. Oh, we're going to make a mess again. Okay, great. Some of it is about what do you need at the time. And I think that it's very important to understand that lots of things start in play. And just by having a relationship, you don't need to have high expectations other than the hour passed and no one cried. Whoa, there's a big deal. And so try and understand, how can you be satisfied? How can you make this a situation where everybody can get through it? You're going to have to do the laundry anyway. You might as well do it with the kid. So that is how it started. And I used to fold clothes holding the kids, and my wife got very upset. I'd be holding 3 kids and trying to do this. She's like, how are you doing that? I'm like, someone's going to drop. I'm like, yeah, so what? Well, that is a big deal. I was a dad who didn't think through some of that, and no one dropped. But after a while, you're trying to take up time. You really are trying to figure out what to do. And I think that, especially for me as a dad, and I have 7-8 hours sometimes on a Saturday where my wife is just gone, and I wanted her to be gone. No one was helping. There was no nanny or anything. And so that is just part of trying to figure out, how do you keep things moving along? And so singing and dancing, and it's like, look, we got one movie, I think was our rule, was okay, in an 8-hour period, we'll only get one movie and 2 meals, and that's it. So I got to figure out how to, and so it was about trying to adjust things like that. So yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, I really thank you for that. Really appreciate the point about play. And, those expectations early on were reasonable based on the developmental stage of your daughter. So she could sort because she could recognize the difference between the babies and her stuff. That sounds very reasonable. And I think what happens sometimes, and I still catch myself, is we have expectations that don't match the developmental age and stage of our child. Yeah. And that sometimes leads to frustration. Did you ever have any of those moments?
You know what? I kind of let them lead the way. It was a little bit more, they would be like, oh, well, I'm going to do that. They're like, no, let me try. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Go ahead. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, okay, you dropped half of it. Okay, cool. You got the other half. Let's keep going. So no, I was never in that way. Was it like that? I was I can talk a lot easier about some high school stuff or some other stuff with money, where we had to make some decisions. There's these things called UGs, I don't know if you ever heard of them. These shoes, they're super expensive. They're like 150 bucks a pair. And I had 3. So I remember I came home from a long trip and my wife's like, it's $450. They want these shoes. They're going to make us poor. And she's like, I just want to get the hell out of here. And the Raider game was on and I want to watch the Raider game. And so we decided that it was time to learn what a budget was and how to do Excel. And they were 10 and 11 years old. And we sat down and we're like, okay, we're going to write down what do girls wear. Turns out there are 30 things that girls wear. I had never even heard of camis and all this other crap. And we went all the way down this list of what do girls wear. How many do you wear in a year? All right, we're going to put that up. Now, pricing. Daddy stores, you know, J.C. Penney's, Target. Your stores, Abercrombie, blah, blah, blah. And we came up with what we call a median price. That held 2 quarters of the Raider game. Just doing all that work, I got through. I'm like, hey, it's not till halftime. Keep going. So I made them make pictures and all this stuff. They had to make a picture for all 30 things and median price. And they put it all in the spreadsheet. So then during halftime, we did the multiplication. Okay, Daddy's store, at your store, how much are we going to split? Okay, long story short, it was $420 a quarter per kid. $420 per quarter per kid on a debit card. Put together a contract that said, don't buy drugs. This is for you buying clothes. Don't ever ask for money for clothes again, unless all these rules are followed. $420 a quarter, we're going to give it to you this time. First day, kid goes out, buys a $300 pair of Coach shoes. Check out my shoes, $300 bucks. I go, Rachie, you're just about to start school. She goes, I don't need clothes. I want the shoes. Okay. First week of school, one kid takes all her friends to California Pizza Kitchen. No one pays her back. No one. She comes home, she goes, Dad, it was $80 and no one paid me back. They promised, but no one is. I go, if you just learn for $80 that no one will ever pay you back, that's cheap. She's like fell on the floor. She's a 10-year-old. She doesn't understand. I'm not paying her back. Okay. We never said anything about these kids about anything about clothes, ever. Not once. 8 years later, the one who didn't go to California Pizza Kitchen, the one who didn't buy the shoes, she said, I hate clothes. I hardly ever buy clothes. I have $8,000 in my bank account. She never asked for money for anything ever. The one who went to California Pizza Kitchen had $4,000 in her bank account when she finished high school. The one who had the shoes had about $12. And she's like, oh, I thought we were supposed to spend it all. I was like, wow. But she learned before she went to college that she wasn't supposed to. What? My sisters did. She never even talked to her sisters. So now they're going to college and now they learn about money. They got budget. I gave them a little more, but now they already knew what was going on and they made so many mistakes. Some they talked about, some they didn't talk about. One time someone called me and said, my car's not working. I kept hanging up on them. You know, I was just like, this is their responsibility and they learn. But that's where you have to have this understanding of, man, your kid's going to screw up. Give them a floor, $420. All right, I can deal with that. That's fine. Okay, let's see what happens. But that it's not like my credit card. It's like $420. So I think when you can set up limits like that and you can say, this is where I want to go, then it's like, let's see where they go with it. So we set expectations on what we thought we could get away with. And that worked very well for them. And we give them lots of rope. And then if they hang, we talk about it, we move it back a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much good stuff in that story. Never mind the entertainment value of it, but the learning, the accountability, the fact that they get the opportunity to make choices. So you give them a great safety net, but you show them how you came up with it in the first place. You involve them in it. Make sure that safety net is there, and then you're there to if they land on the safety net, then you, as you said, you debrief, you discuss with them, and you give them steps forward. But now they've learned that lesson so early. So, okay. And then of course that the first comment you made, which was you really just let them lead early on, like when they were much younger. You are more of an observer and like their companion in this process, as opposed to the one who's like saying, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, and it's got to be done this way. Early on, it wasn't like that. You were really observing them and sort of letting their capabilities really dictate how you engage with them, but you still do engage with them that way.
So for us, I think we were always looking how to stop the fighting.
Mm.
And
Yep.
moms and daughters fight a lot about clothes and money, and it just took it out. She's
That's
like,
awesome right there.
Never asked me ever again. They never asked me for money again. They never asked for money to go out with their friends. They never asked for anything like that again. They just stopped. So we took that argument away. I think that the thing that we did very early, and they started learning. And so when we did contracts with them, we made them sign like every line, because they're like, well, I don't remember that. I'm like, no, you sign right there. But when they were very young, we started with this expression because we kept hearing our friends say, no, 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 no. No is this word they kept saying over and over and over again. And we hated hearing it. So we came up with this expression. We called it health, clean, and danger. We said, health, clean, and danger is up to us. Everything else is up to you. And so when they did something wrong, we go, health, hey, no. We go, health, hey, you're about to touch the stove. Health, man, you're going to, or danger, whatever it was, or, well, I don't want to take that medicine. I don't care. It's health. Shove it in their mouth. I don't want to take a bath. That's clean. That's up to me. That's not up to you. I want to wear these boots to school, even though it's not raining. Okay, go ahead. I don't care. That's not health. That's not clean. That's not danger. I don't care. Go ahead. And so they learned what they could get away with and what they couldn't get away with. And I think they really started using that to their advantage, even to the point of going, I don't think that's health, clean, or danger, Dad. I want to do that. And I'm like, all right. Sometimes it's going to be no, because I don't want you to. So we had to kind of come to that conclusion, but at least they started understanding limits and predictability again, and how we could be satisfied. And I think that gave them confidence.
Yeah, awesome. So much good stuff there. I really, the idea of developing that autonomy, problem solving, critical thinking skills by empowering them, giving them freedom, giving them choice. And I love the mindset shift of, rather than say no, I'm just going to hold the value or the principle as the key, and they can choose to evaluate it and follow it, or choose not. Does it align or does it not?
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs. But not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this fatherhood thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads.
David, again, you've had a lot of great business success. Have a conversation piece for you. What parts of your business mindset could you apply to fatherhood, and what parts saying, you know, this works in business, but it ain't going to work as a father?
So I think that's a really great question. And I think, you know, I was a boss, and I think that a few times I came home and I said, wait, this has got to go like this, this, and this. And more than once, my wife said, we don't work for you. You know, don't you bring that home. This is what? And I think that was really important for me to separate that. I think that was a lot more difficult and humbling than I wanted it to be, because I felt like I was over that, but I wasn't. You know, it bothered me, but I had to be put in my place. And there's nothing like screaming children and who just don't give a shit what kind of day you had, because they're hungry right now, or they're whatever they are right now, and they're just going to feel that way. And so I think that trying to be a boss at home is never going to work. And that's not what I'm saying when I say dad on purpose. Joint cooperation is the number one thing. And I think you and your wife need to understand things like, we call it fire and ice. If one's going to be fire, the other one's got to be ice, because you don't want two fires and you don't want two ice. So we really learned on trying to help each other with things like that. But so when you say business and what I want to separate, I would say things like that. I'd say things that of having beginnings, middles, and ends work very well in systems, because sometimes in my day, systems would just go on and on for years and years and years. And I think that I was in that generation that really started moving away from those and moving things to small successes. And then everybody felt good, you know, and sometimes it feels good. A great big success feels almost the same as a small success. So why are you working so long before you get it? So I think we try to do that with our children as well, as trying to, again, understand satisfaction and understanding what success was in their own little ways. And they needed to learn things like, you know, they learned to cook because they didn't want to clean. We were very tough on them. If you don't cook, you got to clean. That's it. So how do I learn to cook? I'm not sure. I'm not telling you that yet. I'm just telling you you're cleaning. And so they had to learn that there was going to be certain consistencies, and that if they want to get out of it, hey, here's at least an avenue. You know, I don't know anything about cooking. Somebody else in this house might. It's not me. So that was up to them to move forward. They all became incredible cooks because they hated cleaning. And they all knew they better find husbands who liked to clean, because they weren't going to clean. So I think that really worked well for them, understanding in relationships, you can't just be one way. You got to at least understand both sides. And so I always wanted to kind of make sure they understood things like that.
Want to follow up another conversation piece, especially in the early years. How did you handle moments of self-doubt as a father?
Well, I think that in my case would be screaming to the neighborhood, I guess, would be my translation of that. There was a show when I was growing up called Sanford and Sons, and Sanford every once in a while would go, "Lord, take me now," you know, and I
Elizabeth, yes,
scream like Red Fox to like the entire neighborhood, because I just wanted my life to be just taken right now. I was just like, please, just kill me now. I got good insurance, just kill me. And but I don't know. I wasn't real good. I didn't want them to necessarily see that, but I think every once in a while they heard that. But I think for the most part, I had a lot of, you know, you always have self-doubt. I think it's more of like, you know, don't let them pit us against each other. You know, don't do that. Don't let them do that. They'll do that in a second. They're looking for weakness, just even a little bit. So I think that I was also very careful in trying to make sure that my wife and I were super in sync on stuff like that. And she's like, you know, maybe you need a little time, and especially as they got older, because, you know, girls are teenage women are very, very opinionated, I guess. And I don't know. Anyway, I'm not sure what age the children are, so I've seen it now that my kids are 29 and 30. I feel like I've really kind of gotten over that, and that was part of why I wanted to do this, was because I wrote all these things down, and they haven't had children yet, and they'd never asked me, and I'm going to tell them anyway. So this is what happened, and do what you want with it, but at least know I put it in mind.
How has Dad on Purpose writing it changed your perspective on fatherhood?
Well, I think it reminded me how difficult it was, a job. It's not something that I think goes into a light heart. I'm surprised that I'm still so involved in my kids' life and they're 29. I always said, hey, you're sentenced to 20 years because I kind of figured after they were 20 years, hey, I'm good. And I got my kids are only 16 months apart. So, hey, I'll be 22. That'll be it. Well, now it's been 30 years and they break my heart still every day. So I I don't know. I'm happy that I wrote it and got it out. I also know though that everyone kind of looks back on that of me writing it in such a way where I'm like, I want to be more instructional because not everybody's going to be as diligent as I am. And so this is much more instructional than maybe some of the things I even did with my children because I didn't have to. And I think they're like, you didn't do all these things. And I'm like, but this is what I would have done. I'm not saying it's a memoir. I'm saying this is kind of a self-help on how to. And I'm very proud of what happened with my girls because I think they did an incredible job. But I also feel like, I had 3 or 4 dads in mind who I really was close to, who I just saw screwing up so often on some of the most basic things like joint cooperation and trying to be their kids' friend. You're not your kids don't need a friend. They need a dad. I think that that's a really hard thing sometimes for dads to realize is your kid doesn't need you as a friend. And if they're pretending like you're the friend, they're just blowing, it's just for whatever they want. So I think it's important for us to understand that you are there for a very, very important purpose. And to not understand your role and try to make it more than it is or more or not enough of it is, I think it's just wrong. And I was very purposeful in thinking that when I wrote this book. And so I wrote it with that perspective in mind. And I was trying to look at some of the things that I felt like we might have failed on a little bit. But I also had to keep in mind that my kids were only really comfortable with me talking about the first 10 years because they weren't as comfortable with some of those other years and how some of those things were handled. So I backed off on that.
Cool. What's been the most rewarding aspect of being a dad for you?
Oh, I never thought my heart would break in such a good way. I'm about to have, I had one daughter who got married in January and another one getting married in 2 weeks. And so being the father of the bride is probably the best role I've ever had. I just love being that person standing next to this incredible woman who looks up to me. And so I feel very, very blessed, that I'm able to see my daughters do this right now and dance with them. And I just think that I always knew that I was going to be a dad. That's why I was a dad on purpose. I just knew it. I knew I'd be a dad, and I wanted to do it in a really great way. And at a certain point, I kind of feel like, even though they're still really my children, I've kind of done my job. And I feel like, okay, that was my thing. So having a legacy of raising beautiful daughters to at least, get to this point in their lives is just fantastic to me. And I think that's part of what's really made my life feel full. That I have this relationship with them, I have these memories with them, I have enough to write a book in a short period of time just because it's all just floods me at all times. It's part of who I am. And I love that being part of my life. I love to have a focus on my life of some of these business successes is great, but these are even much better and they're much more tangible and I see them in their faces and I love that.
Okay, Drew, back to you.
Yeah, well, David, thanks so much again for what you've been sharing. And as we wind it down, it's been a great conversation. Really loved your stories, loved what you shared. I'm wondering if you could just last, I guess, point, and then we'll wrap it up. Is what looking back, one, did you have a goal that you were hoping to achieve, as a dad, and have you achieved it?
I think I had a goal of, I hate to say it, but of just getting them out of the house, not pregnant, graduate out of high school into college. That was really some kind of a real thing in my head when I'm like, if I can do that, and I can get them into the best school that they can get themselves into, I have achieved a goal. I think after that, they had to have enough fortitude of learning from me on what their expectations are going through school. But all of a sudden now they're completely out of my life. And I think that was my goal. I had a secondary goal of them being off the payroll 3 months after they were out of college. And all three successfully managed that goal as well. And so they were 100% off the payroll after 3 months. And they knew they needed to be. And they were very prepared to be. And I feel the three men that they have found have been men I'm glad that they picked for themselves. These are very fine men. They all come from relationships where their parents have been married as long as my wife and I have been married. And so I like that they're going into long-term relationships. They seem like good men. And I don't know. I feel very satisfied that some of these goals have been met. And I think that when you ask, what is the one question dads should be asking themselves about raising their kids, your first question, it really comes down to understanding that you can be satisfied. And do you know what satisfaction is? Mm. And can you accept they did it? Okay, check. Get checked. Be able to put wherever you want that written somewhere in your life or in your head or on a plaque or whatever it is, or even if you sit down with your kids going, hey, you know what? You made it, man. And I feel like I was there too. And we did that together. This next part of this chapter is done. And I'm feeling great about it. And I think that people need to understand that they need to ask themselves, do your kids know when they've satisfied you? Do your kids know that? When was the last time your kid felt like they had met your expectations? And you were like, wow, thanks, Dad. Thanks for telling me I met your expectations. Thanks for letting me know that I did a good enough job. When did that happen? If you want to ask yourself, when would that happen the last time with your kid? And I think that's something that I'm always trying to make sure my kids know when they've done a good job for me. I'd say if there's any one action that a dad could do to improve, just something that they should start. So I have a whole chapter in my book about this, but the bottom line is decision making. Understanding that getting your child involved in decision making, even at the most granular level, is the best way for them to start feeling that they're a part of decisions, even knowing it's going to be their turn at a certain point. I talk about a lot of different ways on decisions are being made. Even if it starts out like, hey, I'm thinking of going to one of these three places. Is there anyone you don't want to go to? I don't want to go to Chinese. Okay, great. We're not going to Chinese because Zoe doesn't want to go to Chinese tonight. So now we're going to go to one of these two and your mom and I will decide. Thank you, Zoe. And that's the end of it. And at least they know they had some say. Hey, at least we're not at Chinese. That's right, because Zoe didn't want to go. And so you even play that up. Starting to try to take those actions, even at the granular level. Okay, I'm going to give you three and you pick one. That's where we're going to go. One of these three. Oh, Zoe picked where we went today. Next time it'll be Adina's. The next time it'll be Rachel's. And we keep track of who makes those decisions. So having some plan of decision making, even at the most granular level, even of like, what are we having for dinner tomorrow? Or what's going on? And sticking with it and pointing that out, I think is a way to get them starting to be more involved in whatever that piece is. And they'll know that they made that and that the other children are going to have their chance as well. And so I think it's because we used to call it the possession era, like in basketball. You kind of knew who was going to make the next one, and we kind of keep track. Oh, next one's Zoe. Oh, next one's Rachel, and they move it. It's like that's who gets to decide. And so that was very important to them to feel that they were part of decision making. So I would have a decision making strategy where they feel like they're involved, or where it's like, hey, this is one you're not involved in because this is mom and dad's. That's not yours. This other thing you are, because there are things they're not going to be involved in. Don't think they're involved in everything, but let them start understanding there are those boundaries. And as life goes on, some of those things will change. So those are the two things I would say that they should start doing today.
Well, David, so good, so wise, so practical though. somebody can listen to this and just say, wow, look at all these elements that I can just take away and I can apply right away. So thanks so much for being a guest on our show. Why don't you tell people where they can find out more about you and get a copy of your book?
Yeah, I think just going to dadonpurpose.org is www.dadonpurpose.org is you can click on it to go to Amazon to get my book, but learn more about how I can offer time talking to people if they want to talk to me, but just more about where the principles are that I believe in. I'm really happy to be a dad, and I wanted to write this book, and people want to talk to me about it. That's great. I've done very well raising children and talking to other people about it, and I love doing it. And so I have a lot of things that are going on. I'm semi-retired, like you said, and so if people wanted to talk to me about it, that'd be great. If people want to buy the book, that's great. If people disagree with some of the things that I did and want to talk about that, that's fine too. I'm all open for hearing everybody's opinion. I just want people to want to be on purpose. That's what's important to me.
Yeah, so good. Thanks so much, David.
David, we'd like to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to share with our audience today, and appreciate all you have done, are doing, and will be doing for dads and families. And look forward, if there's anything we can assist you with in the journey of making dads and families better, we're here with you. And as always, we like to say, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace. All right.
Oh man, so much good stuff. For my quick summary, when you hear the word purpose, there's for me a lot of power in that word, and it's beyond. We talk about being intentional on the show, but intentional is one thing, but purpose it almost goes beyond you, and there's a bigger meaning behind it. And so when you dad on purpose, I feel like there's a tremendous amount of value that you leave both in your children, but then in what they leave wherever they go and whatever they do. So I think of the word that connects to purpose is this idea of legacy. So it sounds like David has built an amazing legacy as a result of his choices to be a father on purpose and now share that with others. So that's what I leave the conversation with.
Yeah, a number of things. I'll just build on what you said about purpose. I'm a strong believer that, there's a lot of people that have passion and purpose. I love people who have passion and purpose, but the key thing for me is it align with who you are. And from what David shared today, his passion and his purpose is definitely aligned with who he is. So I want to just share that with dads, fathers, and male caregivers. Have that passion, have that purpose, but make sure it's aligned with who you are, because if it isn't, you're going to notice. More importantly, your family and your kids are going to notice. So on that note, just want to share that the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. We want you to reach out to us, email us, guest suggestions, show suggestions, subject suggestions. Hey, what can we improve on, or what are we doing all right? Email us, podcast@dadcentral.ca. Website for listening or watching the great replays we have of these epic conversations, dadcentral.ca/podcast. And then finally, we have lots of free resources. So check them out at the website, dadcentral.ca. As always, want to thank you for taking the most valuable thing you have in your lifetime to spend, listen. And hey, is there an action point that you can work on? As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll chat with you soon.